Hey you guys, welcome back to my keto cooking channel where I try a bunch of keto recipes and none of the recipes are my own. I'm just here to waste my almond flour so you don't have to. I hate this f***ing squeaky chair. So make sure to subscribe to my channel, hit that notification bell so that you get notified the next time I do upload. In this video, I'm going to be trying out 5 keto cinnamon roll recipes and their cream cheese frosting from the following recipe creators. It's going to be Lauren from bonnappeteach, Paola from Nom Nom Yum, Brenda from Sugar-Free Mom, Matt and Mega from Keto Connect, and California Country Gal. Okay, so the last one isn't from a creator, it's an actual keto product that I purchased just to use for this video, but we'll find out if it's actually worth the price tag. So if you want to know who has the easiest recipe or the best tasting recipe or the recipe that's not made from fathead dough, then keep on watching.
To prep for this video, I'm going to need a scale for accuracy and a handy dandy thermometer. It's going to come in handy in 2 ways. One is going to help me to make sure I don't kill our yeast in this video. And then 2, it's also going to make sure I never undercook a chicken ever again. And in this video, I did include one recipe made out of fathead dough. I know some people aren't a fan of cheesy bread in a sweet recipe, but I did include one in this video for comparison's sake. So actually 2 recipes are going to be using yeast, which I've never done before, so I'm kind of scared. But according to the recipe I followed, the yeast eats the honey. So the honey actually doesn't affect the total carb count of the recipe. And lastly, this is the only prepackaged product we'll be using in this video. I first got introduced to it by my Instagram friend Angel619SD. She posted this absolutely delicious looking photo on her Instagram using this product. I had every intention in remaking this recipe but decided against it. 1, I realized I didn't have the exact ingredients she used, and 2, I realized that if I had purchased this product on my own and had I not seen Angel's post, I would have only followed the directions on the back of the product. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna follow the directions on the back as is and hope it comes out somewhat decent. So in Lauren's recipe, we are going to be using yeast, cream cheese, cinnamon, vanilla extract, psyllium husk, honey, coconut flour, erythritol, salt, baking powder, heavy whipping cream, butter, and powdered erythritol, and 3 eggs. So first we're going to start with the sciencey portion of this recipe. It's going to involve activating the yeast, and what we need to do is we have to make sure that the water is the right temperature. If the water is the right temperature, that means that the yeast gets activated correctly, which means we don't have to redo the whole thing again because activated yeast equals fluffy cinnamon rolls. So according to Lauren's blog post, if it starts getting foamy and bubbling up, it means we've correctly activated the yeast. So it looks like we're doing good so far. So while that ferments on the side, we're going to start combining our sweetener and melted butter first, and then add the rest of our wet ingredients, and then finish it off by adding our activated yeast. Alright, so next we're going to combine all of the dry ingredients in a bowl, then dump in the wet mixture, plus we're going to add more hot water. Lauren says that you can use tap water for this part. You just have to make sure it's not too hot that it kills the yeast, but I don't trust myself to get it right, so I still took the temperature of the water off camera. Then we let it rest for 20 minutes on the side. Okay, so while that's chilling on the side, we're quickly going to make our cinnamon sugar, which is nothing more than just cinnamon and Lauren's recommended keto sugar. Now that that's out of the way, it's time to get rolling. Since her dough isn't super sticky, I'm able to easily roll it out between 2 pieces of parchment paper, which is actually surprising to me because I thought the dough looked pretty dry and I thought it would end up cracking on me or I would have to add more water to glue it together, but it actually worked really well. Alright, so next we're gonna slather it with some butter, sprinkle it with some sugar, and then we're gonna do some more rolling. This part right here wasn't so hard. I didn't have to deal with anything leaking out or anything sticking to the parchment paper too bad, and I don't know if it was really necessary for me to do so, but I did massage it afterwards just so that it could look nice and smooth. Then we're gonna cut the dough into 8 even-sized pieces. And then we're going to place them into a very well buttered cast iron skillet, spreading them out a bit so that they don't touch and giving them a final smush before we cover them up with plastic wrap. So the recipe says to wait 60 to 90 minutes for them to poof up and get bigger in size. I'm only waiting 60 minutes because I got 4 more recipes to make. So while we're waiting, we're going to work on our cream cheese frosting. Her recipe only has 4 ingredients, and the most important tip she includes in the recipe is to make sure your cream cheese is soft so that you don't end up with chunky frosting. So this is how they look at the 60-minute mark. They kind of look poofy to me. I don't know. Let me know in the comment section below if I should have waited the full 90 minutes. So this is it. This is her cinnamon rolls. Now let's find out how they taste.
Okay. You want to know a fun fact? I had to use yeast for the first time, and I used honey.
Ooh.
I did a science experiment with this.
Is honey even keto?
It's not, but the yeast eats the honey, so...
But doesn't yeast make sugar?
No, yeast feeds off of sugar.
What does it make?
It rises. It helps dough rise. It's called fermentation.
It's called CO2 activation.
I don't know.
Get yourself
Fermented?
solidified.
All right.
I always like the middle part where it's like nice and warm and cinnamony.
What kind of sugar's in this? I want to say stevia.
No.
Automatically, I taste the sugar. Like, that's front end. Yeah, the bread's good. I mean, it definitely tastes like a cinnamon roll. The icing on it was pretty good. It didn't feel like it was too prominent. Sometimes you get some of those cinnamon rolls that have really like cakey type of icing. This was, you know, it's subtle. It's in there. I think my favorite part of this one is the pull. It pulls kind of like dough, like a doughy pull.
That's the yeasty.
I like it. Definitely different. I haven't seen bread that has like that pull, especially on the keto side.
I want to drench everything with the icing.
This is my favorite one so far.
You had one.
Cool. What's next?
So next up is Paola's recipe, the other yeasty recipe. And we're going to be using sour cream, honey, yeast, ground ginger, protein powder, flaxseed meal, allulose, xanthan gum, baking powder, salt, apple cider vinegar, butter, confectioner sugar, heavy whipping cream, cinnamon, vanilla extract, almond flour, cream cheese, and 3 huevitos. Paola's yeasty recipe starts off with mixing sour cream, water, and honey. She uses maple syrup in her recipe, but I only got honey, so we're using honey. And unlike the last recipe, we're not going to mix the yeast into it right away. We're going to warm this up to 110 degrees in a fancy water bath. Then we're going to add in our yeast and add a dash of ginger. Just a dash, not the whole thing like I almost did. Then we're going to cover the mixture with a kitchen towel and let it rest for 7 minutes. And if it comes out bubbly, that means we did it right. And what do you know? It actually came out bubbly. Thank God I didn't want to do this all over again. That was a lot of work. Okay, so now that that's done, we're going to work on combining all of our dry ingredients together and giving it a nice mixy mix. Then we're going to get all of our wet ingredients and mix it into our yeasty poof. Next, we have to work really quickly to combine our wet stuff with our dry stuff, and the result we're looking for is for a sticky, icky dough mixture. Paola's recipe is one of the stickiest recipes we'll be using in this video, so before we start rolling, we have to have our workstation ready, and that includes having our saran wrap spread out, ready for rolling, our water for wetting our fingers, and oil to help spread out the dough. Once we have our dough rolled out, we'll quickly make her cinnamon sugar, which is nothing more than just cinnamon and sugar. We'll mix it up together, slather a layer of butter onto the dough, and sprinkle it all over. Now we get to the rolling part, which I thought was going to be the hardest part because of how sticky the dough was. But it turns out that it's a lot easier to roll with saran wrap than it is with parchment paper. I didn't have to deal with any lingering pieces of dough left behind. And even though the dough was pretty sticky, I was still able to cut it into 3 even pieces without having to worry about it getting stuck to my hand. Because in this recipe, you can't cut all of the cinnamon rolls off of one log. You have to actually go back and work in batches. If you think at this point we would just throw them in the oven and bake them, you're wrong. Because we're going to cover them with the kitchen towel and we're going to wait 60 minutes so that they can double in size. While the dough is doing its thing, we're going to mix together all of the frosting ingredients. The recipe actually says to mix the cream cheese, butter, and the powdered sweetener first, then add the vanilla extract and salt, but apparently I don't know how to read, so I just mixed everything together all at once. And because the frosting was looking a little thick, I did follow Paola's instruction by adding a teaspoon of heavy whipping cream to kind of thin it out. Alright, so did the dough double in size? They kind of look the same to me. Let me know in the comments below what you think. So this is what the rolls look like at 8 minutes into baking. At this point, Paola suggests covering it with loose foil just to prevent them from browning. Alright, so this is what they look like after completely baking in the oven. They look really fluffy to me. Now let's find out how they taste.
So the next one, this one, fluffy boy, ooey gooey, yeasty boy. So try it, let me know what you think. I've never had these before.
This tastes more like the fathead dough that we use for pizza.
Really?
That's what this one tastes like to me, yeah.
This one feels more like real bread.
When you press on it and you touch it, it's like a tougher bread for sure. But taste-wise, to me, this tastes more like pizza dough that we've used. By the way, if you haven't seen her pizza video, somewhere, maybe there.
This one has no cheese in it whatsoever. The only thing I can think of, this is like one of the first ones that I made. It took 2 hours to make it. They look so good when they came out of the oven.
I think I kind of figured out what I didn't really like about it so much. It's weird to say, but I don't like how it feels in my teeth. It feels like you're chewing on sugar. When I'm chewing on it, You know how like if you were to think of like having sand in your mouth, it's not that bad, but kind of feels like I'm chewing on something grainy. Yeah, I mean it's okay.
So next up is the only recipe that uses fathead dough as its base. We're going to be using mozzarella, cream cheese, eggs, vanilla extract. She actually asked for vanilla stevia, but I'm just going to use more extract because I didn't want to buy a whole different bottle. Coconut flour, xanthan gum, salt, baking powder, crunchy swerve, butter, heavy whipping cream, and brown crunchy swerve. So like every fathead dough recipe, we're going to start with melting the mozzarella and cream cheese in the microwave. Then we're going to mix in the rest of the dry ingredients. And then we're going to add our eggs. And this is the point where I should let you know that you should definitely wait for the cheese to cool down. As you can see, the eggs are not combining easily with the dough. It almost looks like there's pieces of cooked eggs in the dough.
I've actually messed up this dough before, so you'd think I'd learn, but I know for a fact that the dough is still usable. You just have to work it a little bit longer so that it can all get meshed together. So for Brenda's cinnamon sugar recipe, she uses brown keto sugar, cinnamon, and mixes the melted butter directly into the sugar itself instead of onto the dough, which makes it a little different and a little wet. So now for the rolling portion of the recipe. I'm actually pretty familiar with this dough already, so I know it's easy to work with. It is kind of sticky, so using wet hands help out a lot. The only issue I had with it was when I kept rolling it out, parchment paper kept bunching up at the bottom, so I had to keep on flipping it over so that the dough was smooth and not wrinkly. Now that we got the dough looking somewhat decent, we're gonna cut it into 12 equal strips. Next, we're gonna cover the dough with our buttery cinnamon sugar and then start rolling our strips into tiny little rolls and start placing them into our parchment lined baking dish. Then we're gonna drizzle the remaining cinnamon sugar onto the rolls, and because there's no yeast involved, we can stick these right into the oven and start baking. In the meantime, we're gonna mix together all the ingredients to make the frosting. Out of all the frosting recipes in this video, Brenda's uses the least amount of sweetener. Her recipe only asks for 1 tablespoon of sweetener, which I'm grateful for because damn, I went through a lot of bags to make this video. So this is it. This is how they look. Now let's find out how they taste.
This one looks a little squishy. This tastes like French toast. Pretty good.
Can you tell it's made with cheese?
No.
That's cheese bread. That's all cheese. This is basically made with cream cheese and mozzarella.
I did notice that, I mean, it did have more of a different consistency to it as far as flavor-wise. I kind of thought it was going to be more egg than it was cheese. After knowing that, I mean, I do taste kind of the cream cheese on it, but I kind of like it. It's pretty good. It doesn't, I don't feel like I'm eating a block of cheese on this one. Yeah, the cinnamon I think helps mask it a bit.
Is it too late to add ice cream to it?
Too late.
Oh well.
The cheese is there. It's kind of hard to tell. I mean, if you're not a fan of cream cheese, I'd stay away from this one, but it's good.
Okay, so the next one. So next up, we have Keto Connect's cinnamon roll recipe. We're gonna be using almond flour, coconut flour, crunchy swerve, flaxseed meal, baking powder, xanthan gum, salt, eggs, heavy whipping cream, butter, apple cider vinegar, vanilla extract, powdered swerve, cream cheese, cinnamon, stevia, and warm water that's not pictured. We're gonna start off this easy recipe by mixing all of our dry ingredients into one bowl. Then we're gonna dump in the rest of our wet ingredients into that exact same bowl. Once that's all mixed in, we're gonna let the dough take a 5-minute nap. So Keto Connect's cinnamon sugar recipe uses the most ingredients out of them all. Their recipe mixes the butter into the cinnamon sugar like Sugar-Free Moms does, and they cut it with stevia. To be honest, the only reason I have stevia is because of them. They use it in a lot of their recipes to help increase the sweetness without using so much sweetener. And as for their dough, it was pretty easy rolling it out and spreading the cinnamon sugar. It was only until I got to the rolling part that I had a bit of trouble. For some reason, the dough did not want to unstick from that parchment paper. Now that I think about it, I could have used oil or water to help me out. I know she looks a little rough, but no worries, in the end, she looked okay. We're then gonna cut the dough into 8 equal slices, place it in a baking dish, and then throw it in the oven. And for their frosting, you're actually supposed to fluff up their butter, cream cheese, and sweetener first, and then add in the rest of the ingredients. I probably skimmed over that section because I definitely didn't do that in this video. And as for the ingredients, they pretty much used all the typical ingredients you'd find in a cream cheese frosting with the addition of stevia and butter. Alright, so this is how they look. Now let's find out how they taste.
So this one we've had before. I'm pretty sure it's good. I don't know.
You just have horrible memory, but you like this one.
This one's good, but it's not my favorite.
What?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's something about the sweetener that's in these ones, because I can taste the sweetener right at the front.
Like it's right there in the front?
Yeah, it kind of hits you right when you get into it. It is a balanced one. It feels more like a cake. Like it's all kind of put together and you get a little bit of everything all at once. Where I feel sometimes when you eat a cinnamon roll, you do kind of have those different layers. And the individual layers have their flavors, but also they kind of compound and make something similar to this. But yeah, it is pretty good.
Now for our last recipe, we're going to be using Country Gal's $12.99 keto grain-free cinnamon roll mix. And the ingredients we're going to need is the mix, of course, butter, cream cheese, vanilla extract, cinnamon, sweetener, brown sweetener, salt, egg whites, and apple cider vinegar. So like I said before, I'm gonna follow the instructions on the back of the packaging exactly as is, or at least I'm gonna try. So for our first step, we're gonna combine all of our wet ingredients first. I actually had trouble combining our mix with the liquids because of a mistake that could have been easily avoided had I been willing to dirty one other dish. The instructions clearly say dump the mix into the liquids and not the other way around. Either way, I ended up having to use my hands so that it can come together and look like a real dough. So I guess me not reading the instructions is gonna be a recurring theme throughout this section, because when we got to the cinnamon sugar, instead of combining cinnamon and sugar and sprinkling it over the buttered dough, I decided to mix all three ingredients like I had just done in the previous recipe. And I ended up with a chunky mess. I hadn't figured out why my cinnamon sugar looked so wrong at the time. I'm just figuring this out now while I'm editing. I did try adding more butter to make it more spreadable, so I definitely messed up the easiest recipe from the bunch. I'm pretty sure that if you hadn't just finished making 4 different cinnamon roll recipes and know how to read, these buns would have came out looking super delicious. The dough was one of the easiest doughs to work with. Sprinkling sugar onto the dough would have been easier to do if you did it right the first time. The dough was super easy to roll and cut, and each piece looks so perfect, it actually reminded me of store-bought cinnamon rolls. And as for the frosting, I combined butter, cream cheese, and sweetener till it kind of resembled something that looked like frosting.
This one looks cool. It looks like a cinnamon roll dough right before it goes into the oven.
This definitely doesn't look like one that I made. More
Looks
like
almost manufactured, almost store-bought.
Yeah, exactly. It's fluffy.
Yeah, the cinnamon swirls on this one are spot on. The bread is more fluffy. It does have more of a chew to it.
The bread isn't sweet, obviously.
Yeah, the bread's not sweet. It is definitely more of a plain dough. I think I would have liked a little bit more icing. I do like sweeter stuff.
I mean, I did just like put a very thin layer of icings on everything.
Yeah, this tastes like a diet cinnamon roll to me.
Yeah, this one was the one that was like the $15 one. Sweet. I could have sweetened the bread, but I didn't. I was just gonna follow the instructions like it said on the actual thing itself. I'm not creative.
Yeah, the sweeteners are a little tricky. Overall, I mean, it is a good one.
Remember, as always, the full recipes will be linked down below in case you want to make them for yourself. And before we go into our final thoughts on each cinnamon roll, I do want to go over certain factors that may have affected the final results of the cinnamon rolls, such as them being left out during the 7 hours it took me to make them, and the fact that I had to reheat them again once it was time to try them.
Welcome back. Yeah, I mean, out of all of them, I like the texture the best on the first one. The first one, I love the pull on it. It has a nice sponginess as well.
I like the first one. The second one, it's all cheese. I wish I had eaten that one right away.
That one actually surprised me a lot. I like it. Definitely cool to be able to make a cinnamon roll with maybe more limited resources, especially if you're just kind of getting into it, don't want to buy a bunch of different ingredients. Out of all of them, I really was not a fan of the third one. Yeah, the third one was too dry for me. Definitely want to have something to drink with it.
I like that one because it looked like bread, so it was actually like cinnabunny.
Did have the colors, the swirls and all that. The store-bought one, I think it's nice, it looks cool. Taste-wise, wanting a little bit more.
Oh, store-bought one. I already knew I messed that one up because I did the bare minimum and I didn't sweeten the bread because I was like, I'm just gonna follow the recipe like the box said it.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's amazing. I don't think it's bad either. I like the pull. Not too crazy about the price. I feel like if you can be creative and put like a twist on
Add your own twist to it. It's a good base.
Then you can definitely do something with it. Freaking Angel did amazing things with it.
Yeah.
I followed the recipe on the package. And then the last one was Keto Connects, which I like how sweet it is. I like the bread.
Yeah, those are good. It's a really good tasting one as well. It kind of crumbles a little bit easier, but by far I think the first one was the best one. If you are gonna make any of these, I definitely think the one with the yeast, definitely my favorite. It does have the texture, the flavor, it's all there for me.
Out of all of them. So after eating them throughout all of last week, the one that I ended up liking the most was the cheesy one, which is funny because I worked so hard to find one that was not made with cheese and ended up liking that one the best. Something about it being warm and gooey and kind of cheesy and cinnamony tasted so freaking good, and all it was missing was some ice cream. It gave me major cinnamon roll vibes from McDonald's that got discontinued a while back.
Like, what would you recommend to make, after tasting them? Because I know a lot of this does take some time, and maybe we don't got all day, 2 hours to make some of these.
Sorry. I know you guys are like, what the hell, does she actually say anything on camera? But truth of the matter is I have a hard time articulating my thoughts in front of the camera. But basically, in the end, if you want a quick recipe that looks like it was made out of yeast without having to go through all the effort of actually activating yeast, then go for Keto Connects recipe. If you want to go through the trouble waiting an hour for dough to rise and then being able to bake it, go for bonnappeteach. It was definitely worth the wait. If you're creative and know how to dress up a cinnamon roll and have $15 to burn, then go for the pre-made mix. If you're not like me and not making 6 cinnamon rolls in the same day, give Nom Nom Yums a shot and make them and eat them right away. They look so good coming out of the oven, but since I didn't enjoy them right away, I'm not sure if leaving them out for a long period of time contributed to their overall outcome and taste. And if you don't mind the taste of cheese and want something easy without having to buy too many specialty ingredients, go for sugar-free mom's recipe. That satisfied my craving and overall became my favorite one to eat with ice cream. All of this is a win for me. Thank you for watching.
Bye!
I forgot to ask you, which one would you eat? Like, if I told you, I'm like, hey, let's eat one right now.
This one.
The first one.
First one, I love the first one. It was really good. Even though it wasn't sweetened as much as it could have been, this one was by far the best one.
You know what I have a theory of? That you like the first 2 of anything.
Or you put the first 2 good ones at the front end.
I don't know.
I'm gonna shit on the first 2 next episode. Don't be the first 2.